Welcome to another More Than Walking video podcast discussion where we seek to encourage and bring about awareness through open and honest dialogue. And each month we just speak on a variety of different topics. And this month we're going to be covering the topic of diversity and what that means and why it's important to be ever engaging on this topic, because we are in a society that's constantly progressing and constantly changing and constantly moving. So, we have a little time to chop it up with each other, but, for the sake of everybody in the meeting or for the viewing audience, everybody to just kind of go around, tell us your name, where you're coming from, if you have an injury or not, and something that you're looking forward to in 2022. And Jason, I'll let you take that.
Sure. My name's Jason Thurston. I'm a C6 quadriplegic as a result of a diving accident in 2004. I am looking forward to camping this year. Last year I camped 25 nights. I hope to do more this summer.
Nice. How about yourself, Lori?
So I don't have an injury. I work for National Disability Institute out of Washington, D.C., and I get to do that job from home. And I guess what I'm looking forward to is we just had another concert scheduled, and today I got an email, the concert is canceled again. And I really look forward to playing with the local community orchestra soon and having a live audience. I really miss playing, with my peers. I play the violin.
Nice. That was going to be my next question. I was going to ask you what instrument you play. Cool.
Violin, yep.
Nice. Welcome. Ayana, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Ayana. I am a paraplegic. I was shot in 93, gunshot wound, the age of 16. I live in New Orleans, and what I'm looking forward to for 2022 is basically getting more out in the public and being more of an advocate for people with disabilities, and traveling more and visit different cities and states and kind of like see what they have to offer, kind of like, and bring it back to New Orleans to kind of like, because we have a lot of spinal cord injuries here. And I mean, we don't even have like recreational centers here or gyms here, or, just allowing them to get out, to be able to, communicate with others and see that they're not the only ones that exist as a spinal cord injury. When we're out in public, you see somebody and it's like your eyes eventually they go stare at the person, because it's very limited people that's in wheelchairs that we do see. So I just want to just open up New Orleans' eyes to us in wheelchairs, to make it more like we talk about diversity. So, I just want them to be able to open up their eyes to us and make it more user-friendly for us.
That's cool. That's admirable. I think about in 2005, I didn't watch like a lot of TV once I went from one hospital to the next. And then when I finally turned on the TV, I saw what happened with Hurricane Katrina. And a lot of the issues I saw too were people who are disabled trying to get out of their houses, and how difficult that was. So, I think that's important to get people to see, and especially even for like Lori and Jason who live, in a colder climate, where like the snow and the ice and whatnot, it can be difficult. So having a network of people understanding the difficulty for people with disabilities to get in and out and being able to travel and be more mobile, especially during like bad weather, storm systems and whatnot. That's real cool. So I hope you're able to accomplish that.
I hope so too.
This year. That'd be cool. Tahira, how you doing?
Hi, good. My name is Tahira Johnson. I'm a C4, C5 incomplete quadriplegic. I live in Oklahoma City, but I'm from Chicago. So happy to say it was a high of 67 here today.
Oh,
But then the weather's going down a bit later. So it's been up and down. And what else? I have COVID. I'm just getting over it.
no.
But I live in a high rise in the city, and the building is just rampant with COVID. Wasn't like that last time. Like a few people had it and were quarantining. And now at least half the people I know in the building have it. So it's really kind. And then these elevators, I think, just spread it constantly. So I haven't been anywhere in over a week. I haven't left my apartment, but this year I'm looking forward to get a standing wheelchair is what I'm
Yeah.
looking for. Is what I'm looking for. But I think and it's nice to see new faces, but I like what Ayana said about going to different cities and seeing what they have and being able to compare it. And I don't know how New Orleans is on public transportation, but I am on the committee here in Oklahoma City, and it really does help to have someone I'm the only one on the committee in a wheelchair. I found out about the committee some years ago from someone I met who's with the Paralyzed Veterans Association, the PVA, and he had recommended joining because he said there's no one in a wheelchair. And thank goodness, because they act like they don't know what I'm talking about sometimes. I mean, and also in a place like, it's not like Chicago, people here are on the committee, but don't take public transportation. They really don't know what it's like. And if you don't tell them what's going on, they would have no way of knowing. So I would definitely, if you have anything like that, a board in New Orleans that you can get on, it's a big help to have at least someone in a chair who's participating.
Definitely, you need representation from all facets, and that includes our community for sure. Jonathan, boss man, introduce.
I am looking. So, that's right. So I'm Jonathan Sigworth. I'm a C7 complete quad since 2006, and I am looking forward to. What am I looking forward to? Maybe going outside and hanging out with people a little more this year, hopefully. Let's see. Haven't gotten COVID yet. Want to keep it that way, but could really use people power. But besides that, I'm also looking forward to trying to speak at various hospital support groups across the country. We now almost have at least one peer mentor from every state in the US. So the next step for More Than Walking is really bringing all the videos you guys are making, your interviews, your demo videos, and going to support groups around the country and saying, hey, here's this collection of peers of all different levels, and really trying to get the material that we've made over the last several years now out into hospitals. So I'm really excited about that.
Cool, Ben. And Tahira, we are wishing you well. You sound great. Be honest with you, hearing that you got COVID, it saddened me personally, but we are wishing you well. I just wanted to make sure.
It was like a bad cold for 3 days. For 3 days it was rough, and since then it's like slowly petering out. So it hasn't been horrible. 3 days.
That's that roller derby in you.
Yeah.
You're just like,
something like that.
Like it's like a bad cold. I'm good. I'm
fine. That's pretty much been my experience so far.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely don't want to have to contribute to the 99% capacity at the hospitals. So
definitely don't want you to do that. But thank you everybody for introducing yourselves. As you guys saw in the email, my name is Corey Feesley. I'm a aspiring hip hop artist here in Connecticut, and I've put out 3 albums. Most of them have been self-produced, so I also do a little bit of production work. And music is just one of my favorite pastimes that I enjoy. I'm a C4, C5 quadriplegic. I was injured in a diving accident back on June 12, 2005. It's a recreational dive. Water was more shallow than deep, and I broke my neck on impact. And definitely like something that I and Jason were talking about earlier, like, going back to change it. There's some aspects that I personally would change. However, there's so much growth that has been accounted for that I know I wouldn't have matured as much as I have if I hadn't have gotten injured. So that in and of itself has been a blessing. I'm a married man going on 13 years, 14 years altogether, and I'm a father of two rambunctious boys. So a lot of the things that I thought were impossible to accomplish, I've accomplished by the grace of God. And it's all been done through the wheelchair. So it's like, I can't say that walking would have made any of that better when they were all fulfilled in an incapacitated state. And for me in 2022, what I'm looking forward to is our first like family vacation, where we actually are bringing the kids along with us, and we look forward to being able to enjoy something outside of our normal routine and all of the run-of-the-mill things that we do, because that can be for everybody, and we all can use a break at this point from COVID, from being just in our regular atmosphere. So that is definitely something I'm looking forward to this year. But the reason why we're here is to talk about diversity, what that means. Again, like I said earlier, why is it important? So diversity, right? It's basically characterized as having different parts, various opinions, thoughts, and ideas. And those opinions and thoughts and ideas make things, and they challenge us in a way that maybe our conventional state of wisdom may need that challenge, because we're just so used to maybe how we feel. But diversity also is a part of inclusivity, which is essentially to include everybody, or at least try to make the atmosphere feel comfortable enough where somebody feels like they're included. And because our society is changing, in fact, millennials and Generation Z, they're the most diverse group of individuals like ever thus far. There's a statistic that you guys will see at the bottom that says something like 56% out of like 87 millennials are not white, as opposed to the baby boomer generation, which it was more like 72% of 6 million. So life is progressive. It is changing. It's no longer the same as we once thought it was maybe going to be at some point. And that's okay, because change is good. And with change also comes with a little bit of challenge as well. There's a desire to be included, is a basic need of human nature, and nobody wants to be rejected. And because rejection essentially threatens our core sense of belonging. It helps us to thrive. It's okay to not be a part of every single group, right? But it's also, most of us want to belong. Like all of us have said, some of the things that we look forward to doing are all social activities. You want to be able to travel, you want to get around, you want to network, you want to talk with people. That's what you need to be able to do. But when I was drafting this question, it made me think that when we want to network with each other and we're bringing in those new ideas, should every idea be incorporated for the sake of trying to diversify ourselves? And Tahira, I'll let you take that question first.
Every idea, I guess every kind of group in that sort of loosely fitting definition should be included. I mean, people who are disabled should be included, and I guess there probably needs to be an emphasis on groups that have sort of been under the radar or discriminated against. I mean, diversity is an interesting thing. Some of it is changing. a lot now. I mean, gender politics have really changed where people are basically the gender that they say they are, which I think is pretty new. And so diversity sort of changes as well. And I guess there should be some focus on normally overlooked groups. And I think that's probably especially with a lot of people of color, disabled, and then also poor people who often don't get much of a say in what happens in society. So I think I guess my concern is that a lot of groups are marginalized, and I would focus on those groups as much as any others in order to see how we can make life more inclusive for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think what you said in the beginning part, every group, not ideas, should be involved, and a voice for the marginalized is definitely important. How about you, Lori? What do you think every idea should be incorporated for the sake of diversity?
I think that's a difficult question. So I think it's really nice when every idea is heard, and then to take action that is going to improve the quality of life, like the good for all. And, you guys mentioned, different barriers. To take action that's going to eliminate barriers, I think is always the best course of action, because I think everyone experiences those barriers at some point in our lives. Like, as we age, we all pick up disabilities, for example. And so if we can eliminate all barriers, like new housing stock should all be accessible. We're trying to make our home now accessible. We added like a wheelchair ramp to the front door. It would have been so much easier had we done that like 36 years ago when we first moved here.
Wow.
But the wheelbarrow loads we carried up and down stairs. I mean, it's crazy. That's a feature that can improve everyone's life, and it makes it safer too than falling down a set of stairs.
It sounds like your view on the need for the change came through experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's how a lot of things become actionable. It's when it directly affects a person, and then they have the know-how. Then they say, you know what, maybe this can look a little bit different. And mixing it up like that, it turns out sometimes it's just for the better. You know what I mean? I think that's important. That's an important point to make. It's almost one of those things that now that you know better, now you do better, going forward. Jason, how about yourself?
I think it's important that we respect each other's ideas and can accept different ideas. That doesn't happen as much as it should anymore. I think having different ideas and coming from different backgrounds and being able to get along and work together and still do what's right for the common good, I think that makes the population stronger.
That's interesting, right? So common good. So I think that's what, like, diversity tends to threaten comfortability, and people ignore common good. How would, that's a good point. How would you define good for like mankind?
Common good, or common good for mankind? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think to respect and care about the people around you, regardless of their differences, but also to respect differing opinions. I mean, the common good, I guess, it's like it goes back to the golden rule, kind of. I mean, treat people the way you're expected to be treated.
Yeah.
But then there's the platinum rule, and that's treat people better than you expect to be treated. That's a good one.
I like that. We got to put that one on a t-shirt. Yeah, treatment of others is important. Like when we esteem others higher than ourselves, it doesn't mean that you're saying, look, you're better than me, but for the sake of seeing you advance and be better, you should naturally want to see people win. And I think that helps to incorporate different ideas and thoughts respectfully, because you're looking for the best outcome from people. And that kind of just reminds me of what Ayana was saying earlier. She's taken the focus off of herself despite her disability, and her desire is to try to meet the needs of other people through conversation as well. So Ayana, like, how do you look at it? I don't know, like, as far as like even demographics are concerned, like in New Orleans, like diversity, do you think that every idea should be incorporated for the sake of diversity?
I think every idea, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
I think every idea should be considered. I mean, because if we don't hear the idea, then it won't, a light bulb won't show up, or the same issue that one person may have, if the idea doesn't come up, then the answer won't be solved. So I think for diversity, with the ideas is very important to look at them, but not all of them are, should I say, reasonable, or all of them or should not have an answer. I mean, it can be looked at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They can be looked at, but not all of them. You can't address all of them, because you may have some questions and some ideas, and your ideas sometimes can be the same as the next ideas. And in a diversity, we want to broaden, everybody to be able to, they us as spinal cord injuries, they put us pretty much on a back burner in a way, but yet they put us out there in a way. I don't know if you is looking now. I mean, I've been in a wheelchair since I was 16 years old, and when I first was injured, when they took pictures, what they did was they only took pictures from your waist up. They never included the wheelchair, or they made it seem like, that was something that they didn't want to involve in that person's life, or either a crutch, or, any type of apparatus that you may have. They never, never showed it. But now, as 2022, I mean, we have people that's in movies now. They have people that are actually in wheelchairs, that they are putting them in movies, and it's not really, could I say, a sight for a sore eye? Because to me, it seemed like they didn't want to see us, but they wanted to see us, So our wheelchairs became, what can I say? Became a hindrance with us, like we couldn't do anything.
Right.
And we're not like everybody else. So we can't do everything like everybody else. So when I first got injured, I was in high school, and it seemed like I had to prove myself, I was so young, and I still was a child. So it was like, I'm proving myself, letting them know I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Yeah. And I found myself pretty much overworking myself and not being able to adjust to being in a wheelchair. I was overworking myself, of looking at different things that other people were doing, and different ideas and different things. And I'm saying, when they bring up this idea, I'm like, oh, I probably could do that one. Or, and I'm trying to put myself in everything instead of not picking everything, but certain ones to pick to make it adjust to me so I won't feel overworked. So I'm 44 now, and it feels like I feel old because I mean I so busy trying to prove myself, not just to my peers, but to my family, to my friends, letting them know that, hey, I can fit in. And as a child, you wanted to, being so young, as a teenager, life was just beginning for me. So I think as far as the ideas, some ideas are good and some ideas aren't good when it comes down to diversity, because you want everyone to be included and try not to single no one out. You don't want to discriminate against no one's ideas. Everybody's input and their ideas are important, whether they may feel like it's something so small, but that small thing can mean something real big to somebody else.
And thank you for sharing that. That's a really candid answer. I feel like, not that you were necessarily like trying to be up in people's faces, but you were like forcing the issue, forcing people to see, like, look, I'm no different. I can do that. I can do this. I can do that. And I think in some way, like when we talk about diversity and ideas, they shouldn't be forced. It definitely should be heard so that we can get a consensus about it, but I don't think they should be forced necessarily. So like it kind of like you said, you feel old even though you're not. You feel older because you're trying to force this kind of idea in your mind that things got to kind of go this way, and sometimes it just does not pan out that way.
Right.
Jonathan, what about you? What are your thoughts on it?
I really liked what people have said so far, and I think coming back to the should every idea, what is the goal for diversity? What does diversity claim to achieve? And we mentioned the common good, and I think it's important to remember that the common good is what benefits everyone, right? In some way. And we can only really figure out what that is if we know what is common between everyone. And we can only figure that out if we know who everyone is. So figuring out, we in politics, we hear about the common good, common sense. It's impossible to figure out what those are unless we take stock, as Ayana was saying, and really hear everything to some extent. Last night I watched Into the Woods. If you guys have ever seen the musical, it's on Disney Plus. It's a great musical, great movie, fairy tale, whatever, about getting lost in the woods and having your world turned upside down, and the witch becomes the good guy, and all these different characters that you're brought up to believe as kind of being innocent or good or bad, all of a sudden get mixed up, and you're kind of forced to deal with messy identities, messy moral consequences. And I think along those lines, especially, these days, everyone is so politically divided. Almost every country in the world is politically divided to some extent. But to be able to hear and just understand where people are coming from, that's also part of diversity. That's something we have to live by, even if we disagree vehemently. To let people know that we hear them, and to be willing to listen.
That's a really cool answer. It makes me think about something that President Biden had said about like the founding fathers. He said they didn't live up to their ideals or their ideas, but they essentially started something that couldn't be contained. And I think just on the subject of politics, constituency is this whole entire thing with democracy is an experiment really on diversity. Even though the founding fathers weren't as diverse as we are in our current day and age, but it really is, because when you think about, the members in the House of Representatives, you think about the members of the Senate, they're all come from different backgrounds, and those constituencies are different people that vote on the premise that feeling like their voice, their ideas, their thoughts should be heard on a national level. And then there's supposed to be a legislative body that's supposed to like answer and address all. And the truth of the matter is, it's impossible. It's a nice idea. It's a nice way to try to bridge the gap, but it always ends up in a stalemate depending on which political party wants to become in office. We wind up saying, well, some of the leaders in one party may say, well, the voice of the American people have spoken. Yeah, in Kentucky or in Indiana or New York, but that doesn't mean that's the overall voice of everybody. That's the people that you represent. So going back to what Jason said, trying to find commonality, Jonathan said it as well, searching for, well, what are the things that are basic to human nature? And that is, nobody wants to be rejected, but you also have to be able to accept rejection. You have to be able to say, you know what, this may not fit in to the piece of the puzzle. Laura, you're an instrumentalist. You play a violin. If you are doing classical music, it may not require, a certain piece that needs to be involved. That doesn't mean that that instrument is less important and whatnot. It just does not fit into where the song is going to go. It's just like when I produce a beat, like if I want a R&B type of feel, there's certain drums I have to use. I can't use something hard hitting because then it takes away the feel of it. And then the person who's listening to it, they get lost within the music and it can be confusing. So, I definitely think that people need to be heard, but to try to force your way into making things diverse so you can say it's diverse, I just don't think that should be. We just have to work out ways to just say, you know what, the overall consensus is this. This is where we're going to go. We may shelf this idea, but revisit it at a later point. But, I feel like as far as my example is concerned with democracy, that's a way that we can visually see it. And so it leads me to our second question. Diversity adds to quality of life, but can be difficult to quantify. If you could hold diversity in your hand, what would it look like? And Ayana, I'll let you take that question first.
Why? Okay, if I can hold...
Because you got the warmest weather.
Okay, if I can hold diversity in my hand, that's something to think about. I would want it to, of course, it to be beautiful, no mistakes, no flaws, like a diamond, because a diamond has to go through so much to become what it is. And it's beautiful once it comes through the rock, and once they carve it, and once it, it has to go through so much, and once it become what it is, it's beautiful. So I mean, for us, when we say us, we've come through so many things in our life, for as everybody, whether it be disability or, death or, breakups, just anything, we've learned from everything we've been through, and some of it hurt and some of it felt good. And in the midst of that, we became, out of that mud and that rock, we became something beautiful, still to say, and still be able to push forward and able to, keep moving. So I think I would say a diamond.
I like that answer. Pressure. Beautiful things come from pressure, and that's exactly how diamonds are formed, from high pressure point and whatnot, and they come to the surface, and They're some of the most valuable things that we cherish as far as gemstones are concerned. And I like it, utopian, really, like, a diamond without flaws or cloudy or anything of that nature. Like, no, it's something that should be um, looked at
It's
as
beautiful. Yeah.
I agree with that. Jason, how about yourself? You could hold diversity in your hand. What as an object? What would it look like to you?
Well, not to copy the rock idea, but I thought about this one earlier today, and I was thinking if you could hold in your hand, it would be a bunch of different rocks of different sizes and shapes and colors, but that fit together in a way that held them all together and made them strong. As opposed to if you had a pile of rocks that was all round, there's no way they're going to, you know what I mean? There's no way that's going to work together. And so I guess on the utopian concept, like for the rocks to perfectly interlock exactly, even though they're different is, perfection is obviously not possible, but we want to work towards that as much as possible. So I think diversity is strength. The more different parts we have, and if we can learn to work together, that makes us stronger.
I like that. Diversity is strength. You batting 2 for 2 for the t-shirt ideas. No, that's cool. It's kind of like a mosaic.
Yes.
Fragmented pieces coming together, and then when it creates the image, you're just like, wow, like I would have never thought to see something like that actually come to pass. I know we just right before the winter break, we had just gotten our mailbox done over, so it's like it's encased in some stone or what have you. And when I was watching the landscaper do the work, and just how he would take one piece of stone and he'd look at it and kind of eyeball it, and then he'd go to cutting it in a different shape, different from the other ones, and we'll put it all together. And I looked at, I was like, do you draw? It's like, yeah, a little bit. I was like, I can tell because you're taking so much time, and all these different pieces, though they're not perfectly rectangular or square, the way that he lined them up, it makes the thing look beautiful. It makes it look strong. It's still coordinated despite different pieces. So definitely diversity is strength with differences. I would probably add to that. Lori, how about yourself? What do you think diversity look like if you could hold?
Well, I'm really liking that everybody has a different image that came to mind. That's really, really neat. And so I kept like looking at my hands, and so I think like water flowing over my hands, trying to cup it, and the water changes, right, as conditions change. So
Yes.
Right now we're in COVID and we're all like frozen here. We're trying to stay apart, and we're not as active as we used to be, like a piece of ice. And then steam, when there's all kinds of controversy and things, we can go up in the atmosphere and we get lost for a period of time, and then we come back again to the form of water. And we all need that interaction and need water, so it's refreshing. I don't know. That's all I can think of. But
that's cool. I like that. It reminds me when I was a kid, I was super into martial arts and what have you. And one of the things that Bruce Lee said on I think he was like on a talk show, he did this comparison. He said, water gets poured into a teapot, becomes a teapot, water gets poured here, be like water. And that's pretty much the flexibility of it, be able to not conform because you just want to go along with the flow, but you want to be able to conform to be able to show that this is a different look to it. You know, if water does not evaporate and turn into rain, it doesn't replenish. And we do need to be replenished, and we do need to have maybe our focus is reset every now and then so that we can admire the differences that are coming. So that's definitely, you know, definitely a good way of looking at it and making a great illustration. Tara, how about yourself?
If I could hold it in my hand,
Yes,
I think
what would it be?
diversity would look like a hot mess. No, I
Ooh.
think that actually everybody else came up with such good answers. I was like, oh, the pressure is just mounting with each person who's spoken up. But no, I was kind of perplexed about that question. But I guess because there's so much to include in diversity, I
Yeah.
guess it would not have a static look. It would always be changing, I think, as people change and as sort of groups change and people become less disabled and more disabled. And so I think that diversity is always changing. So I think it's always going to look different over time.
No, you're right. And that's precisely what it is. It's always looking different. What we know now as our norm will be recorded in history. And, you know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when we're all gone, people will look back and say, man, like, I don't know how they did it, but it looks vastly different. You know, my kids sometimes say, like, man, the 90s was so long ago. Like, no, not really. Like, how did you guys order stuff and whatnot? It's like, yeah, we use something called a catalog, and you had to go to the back of it and fill out your information and mail it in. You know, you couldn't just go on demand or order things. And, you know, to some degree, some of these changes have undone a lot. You know, you show a kid a payphone, they're like, what is this? You walked to talk on the phone because you didn't have necessarily a phone in the house? Like, yeah. But these changes have helped in other areas where if your car is broken down, you're in the middle of nowhere and you have reception, guess what? You can make a phone call and somebody can help rescue you. So, you know, even in a technological standpoint, diversifying things of that nature has really helped change. It's not just dealing with people. I think it deals with all facets. Jonathan, how about yourself? Like, what does diversity look like to you?
I just wanted to comment that I really love the diamond illustration, also because it speaks to the resilience of diversity. I was thinking of I was going to say an orchestra because we have a member of the orchestra here. But the song, the Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen came to mind because it's one song, super long, way longer than it needs to be. It's kind of old, but it has so many different genres of music in it. Probably not as many as it could. So I was thinking, okay, well, a Bohemian Rhapsody, like for the end of time, I don't know, or like for maybe a Bohemian Rhapsody every decade where you can add in Skrillex and some R&B and some good classical. You know, I think just how every perspective has its own sound, has its own role to play in the overall song that we're listening to and making together.
I like that. You know, as a writer, whenever I'm writing down rhymes or if I'm writing down a particular song, I'm always conscientious of melody and cadence. And, you know, if the song is kind of static, like Tara was about diversity, you know, it can get boring and it can be mundane. But if you switch up the pattern to go up and down or if you switch up the melody and the beat to give it some movement, it makes it more pleasing to the ear. And so it's important to have those different dips and the fluctuations. You know, there's all type of proverbs out there where you know, people may say like, I've been in the valley low, I've been to the mountain top, but in each of those changes in your life, those ups and downs, you begin to learn something different. And yeah, you know, and there's things that you may have experienced along your travels that can be added to help, you know, even other people later on in life when they're going through something, or when they have a change that's occurring. Those different experiences can help them. For me, when I think about, like, if I could hold diversity in my hand, I think about a Rubik's Cube, just not change though. Like all the colors are not on one side, and it's not all red on this, not all white on, not all blue, but it's just everything is completely mixed up. And even when you look at a Rubik's Cube and you see all the colors on different sides and whatnot before it gets put together, they're still perfectly in order. They're all still squares nonetheless, whether you change it or not. And one side doesn't have to be just solid in feeling necessarily comfortable per se, but you know, it still looks nice with the different array. So for me, that's what it was, like a Rubik's Cube.
Corey,
but
you reminded me of something else I was going to say, which was we were talking about the common good and kind of the need to find harmony, right? We were saying that it should look beautiful, right?
Right.
And you can have a really simple song with one genre or just in one key, and you can idolize that for its harmony, right?
Right.
But the more things you throw into it, it takes skill to turn that into harmony. It takes, you know, so even the contrasting, harsh, off-tune, sharp flats, you know, all of those things can still together be harmonized, but it takes a lot more effort and depth of understanding. And that just, I was thinking like, well, why don't we embrace diversity? Well, because it's not as harmonious perhaps at first, but there's just a different depth of harmony that we have to achieve.
I totally agree with that. It's kind of like when you're recording music, you know, it's nice to go in there and you can put as much into a beat, you can put a lot into lyrics, but once it gets arranged and somebody mixes it, they pick apart what needs to be in there and what doesn't need to be in there. And that's what ends up creating the harmony in it. You know, even going back to question one, when I was writing, I was thinking about like, kind of like Hitler, like he had this ideology of what he thought was beautiful. And he ran with it, and millions of people lost their lives as a result of that belief, as a result of one man's opinions and thoughts that he was able to channel. And even in our political atmosphere now, between whether you get vaccinated or not, it's a thought gets put into your head against what can very well be for the greater good of mankind, and yet it's not harmonious at all. So looking out for the greater good of people and finding that unique harmony that we can all kind of sing to is important. Digressing a little bit to question 3. So, you know, we talked about objects, in which, you know, it relates to materialism because an object is something of material. And we place our value in things, and that value system can definitely be misconstrued. You know, we'll diversify stock market portfolios, but we don't necessarily diversify our people portfolios, maybe who we hang out with, who we're friends with, who we stay in close contact with. What are some ways to invest and enrich our relationships with each other? And Jonathan, I'll start with you.
take risks, join our Zoom or podcast call.
Yeah. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. I don't know, just being willing to be vulnerable and break up your routine, and I don't know, I guess realize who we're really connected to. The person who's driving the bus that we take. There's a whole life of drama, behind that person who you see every day, and they just do the same thing. Just being willing to reach out beyond just the surface, like what we're doing. Heck, we are sitting here on a Thursday night, philosophizing, which is fantastic. And that's, I think it's just one example of how to do that.
I definitely agree with that. I think the key takeaway from that is take risk. That's important, because you don't know who life you're investing in the moment, and the impact that he or she can have on you and other people down the road. Jason, what's your take on it? How do you think you can invest and enrich your relationship with other people?
I think active listening. Too often people are thinking about what they're going to say next to really fully pay attention to the other person. So I think if people actually took the time to listen and try and understand where somebody was coming from, that would make us much more rich.
I learned about that term when I went through marriage counseling. Before we got married and while we were engaged, that's something that our pastor went over. He said active listening. And one example was, I said to my wife something to the effect of, like, I go to Wendy's, get me a cheeseburger, some fries, and a Sprite or like that. And then my pastor was like, all right, now, repeat what you heard him say. And it was like off. And that was a prime example. Not that like she was trying to ignore me or anything, but it's a point of active listening, hearing the person's concerns, hearing the person's needs, saying, reasonably, this is how I can approach you, and hopefully I can help change whatever issue you may be having. Maybe I can help you resolve it. And active listening is so important. And as we're doing right now, we're actively listening to each other's ideas. We're coming from different backgrounds and cultures and whatnot, but yet we're actively engaging with one another, which is a sign of progress. Sarah, what do you think? How can some ways you can, or not just you, just anybody, enrich their relationships with other people?
Did you say my name?
Yes.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I like taking risks. And what else? I occasionally with the work that I do, I speak to people. I work for a state agency, and people with all kinds of disabilities call us. And I had someone over the summer who called, and he was newly injured, and I asked him about it. And his injury was almost exactly the same as mine, also spinal cord and a motorized wheelchair. So he came into the city with a couple of family members, and we all met at a restaurant not too far from where I live. So it's nice, I guess, to take advantage of opportunities. I would say, kind of carpe diem, and just when there's now with COVID, it's a little more restrictive. Although not in Oklahoma so much. They're all pretending it doesn't exist down here. So, but so that's a little more restrictive. But I think taking advantage of opportunities to do different things, meet with different people. I think I try to do that as much as I can. So
and I think that's cool because, all of us in one shape or form, have that. And I think that's kind of like the commonality that I'm finding with all of us is the desire to reach out to people and find different ways for opportunity. I remember, I think, Jason, you said that you at like a camp up there.
Yeah, I work for a campground that's specifically for people with disabilities, and my job is outreach. So I cast my line in all directions.
Right.
Like I said, I couldn't figure out how my name got brought into this world that I'm speaking in right now, but it's probably something I filled out or somebody that I talked to along the way, and you just never know.
Mhm.
I think vulnerability is a big part of that too, though. I like what Jonathan said, because you have to let go of yourself a little bit in order to be able to accept other people.
But what you said too about, you said you probably signed up for this sometime, beforehand. Now it's coming back. It could have just let it be like, oh, maybe this is like some junk email or it's like spam. I'm not going to deal with it. But you took opportunity, like Tahira said. And, we're enjoying your feedback because it's different from just having maybe the same group of people. They, talk or speak, but you're getting other person's feedback. And that is a part of being vulnerable as well. Know us from a can of paint. Yet you're out here speaking some of the truths that you've experienced in your walk, in your journey through paralysis and just your thoughts and opinions on diversity. And I think that's important. So taking opportunity and risk is highly important.
I'm definitely honored to be here, and I'm really happy to be in the presence of some awesome people. I just have to throw that out there.
Likewise, sir. How about yourself, Lori?
I think about looking at like investments and things and getting rid of like junk bonds and things. And I've always been told, don't spend time with that type of person. I think we have something to learn from everyone and to, like you said, actively listen to people, share with people. And if you're in the updraft and you have the opportunity to bring more with you, to do that. And like Ayana was saying, I think she was talking about, needing this sense of needing to prove that she isn't disabled. She has many abilities. We have to engage in things that are help us to care for ourselves too. So we're not using too much of our energy to help only those around us. We need to take care of ourselves as well. So there's always a balance to that. And I guess that's that idea of balancing our portfolio, but to be open to include others as much as we can, to learn about other cultures and to share openly so others have the ability to grow and live their lives to their fullest ability. And we all define that so differently.
Yeah.
It's neat.
No, I like that. You said that you're always told not to maybe talk to this person, deal with this individual, but going against the norm is important. So during Christmas, my neighbor gifted my sons their own book. Like it has their name, and then the whole story is about them, and it's a pretty cool book. And my oldest son it's called Josiah's Rebel. And at first, I thought this was like a super teaching moment about children not being rebellious and whatnot. But to my surprise, what it really was about was being a rebel for noble causes. And it just lists a slew of people, the Martin Luther Kings, the Nelson Mandelas, the different people who have been active in a myriad of communities to go against societal norms to help change perspective. And when you do that, it just turns out, being good. And again, just going back to what we talked about earlier about that cause, what is the greater good? And it's basically essentially how you can support and live your life the best way that you know how, and the decisions that are afforded to you. Ayana, what do you think?
I think, and it's been said, pretty much everybody pretty much said it, just being vulnerable, being able to allow yourself to get introduced to different people, different, a variety of cultures, atmospheres, just allowing yourself to just not be basically afraid of going out there. I think, at the age when I was 16, I wasn't vulnerable. I mean, I was vulnerable because I looked at life like nothing could happen to me, or, how kids are, we dispenseless, and, we can do this and we can do that. And after my injury, I kind of like folded back a little bit. And it took me about probably 5 years to allow myself to become vulnerable again, because I was afraid of, the people of being around me in my condition or in my disability, or not being able to understand my disability or what's going on with me, or the staring. And eventually I had to allow it's okay to stare. It's okay for them to ask questions, because they don't know, and it's okay. But when I was younger, it wasn't easy for me to be able to answer those questions. I think I shied more back and basically looked at it like you're being nosy, or different things like that. So when you say vulnerability, and I would like to also be around more of spinal cord injuries, because my life, I mean, I'm around more of able bodies, so you can learn more from another spinal cord injury person, and kind of like put your ideas together, and kind of like, it's very rare you see a pack of us together. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see them bits and pieces, and it's always probably husband and wife or a friend, but you never see them like everybody, able bodies, just walking around. And I think that that would be something that I would want to do, to kind of like I said, go into different cities and meeting other people, and finding out how they live, and the different tunes that they play, basically, like how they just getting dressed, and how you learn this, and how you did this, and driving, and I drive and I do all of that, but it just being able to look from other people's eyes and their point of view, and not just from mine.
Yeah, no, I like that. Just that openness, and also, for people who may not understand somebody with a disability, that it's like you said, you know what, you got to give people and cut them some slack. That like it's okay to stare because you don't understand it. You're staring out of curiosity. You may be wondering, wow, she's so young. What happened to her? Did she get shot? Was she in a bad accident? Whatever the case is, these are the thoughts that are going through somebody's head. And unless we open up the door and allow people to come in, we can't diversify that way. So how can people understand, kind of where we're coming from? But, I think what's more important than even just sharing the ideas, right, is that we have to figure out a way to make it actionable, right? Like, everybody can talk about it, but how do we begin to make it a real thing? So some of the things I was looking up, and it was happening in the news, and I thought that it would just be a good point to make when it comes down to diversity. One, I don't know if anybody here watches award shows. I don't really watch them, like the Grammys or the Emmys, et cetera. But with the Golden Globes starting last year, they began to protest against it and boycott against it. Why? Lack of diversity. And of the 87 member association that awards these different, trophies to different people who produce and direct and act in films, none of them have been of African American descent since about 2002. So that's 20 years of lack of diversity, and people like Tom Cruise have stood out and turned like some of the Golden Globes he's received. NBC refused to air it, along with Netflix. A number of like prestigious kind of institutions in television and entertainment kind of have been taking a stand for the need for diversity, as well as even going into like what's happening with the coin. Now Maya Angelou is going to be featured on the back of the coin, on the back of a quarter, and she won't be the only person. It'll also be numerous people: Hispanic women, Asian women, the first female astronaut, etc. during this year. Yet, we kind of do these things as a reaction to people crying out, as opposed to, I think, being done from the heart. And even when Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, Saturday Night Live comedians, came out and pretty much aired them out, the association that oversees the Golden Globes, they reacted quickly and said, oh, we're working on it, something that we want to do. We want to get 10% of our association to be more diverse, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't meet their quota as of October, but they did start getting more people. But I think the irony is in how we react to it. And so for question 4, changing one's culture to be more inclusive has historically led to conflict and at times violence, whether through legislation or protest. It usually is a long, drawn-out process to help with assimilation. The last few times that even women have been on coins has been, only 3 of them: Susan B. Anthony, Helen Keller, and Sakatawea, I think I'm Sakatawea, a Native American. But these have been like incremental at best. In one word, how can you describe maybe a practical way to help with integrating? In other words, instead of us just talking about it, how can we actually put, our where the rubber meets the road? Jonathan, how about yourself?
Yeah, flash mob.
That's funny.
So to meet Ayana's dream, I think we need flash mobs, and so that's reactionary, but in the opposite way. It's the minority kind of jutting in and all of a sudden becoming the majority in a certain place in time, and exposing that feeling and that difference to a group of people who can then carry that with them. So so flash mob. Also, Ayana, that gave me a really, what you mentioned, I think we should be having more than walking flash mobs when this pandemic is over. I think that would be very fun.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It would.
Just 50 deep in the mall, wheelchairs just clogging up traffic. Everybody's like, I can't walk, I can't get around. Well, welcome to my club.
So much fun. So much fun.
That's cool. How about yourself, Lori? What do you think is a practical way to help with integrating this idea of diversity?
So I got two words, invite and then challenge.
Mm,
But like when I started here at NDI, I was surprised that like we would be preparing materials like about, you know, the person who has one arm and they're missing their right arm. Is it okay to shake like their left arm? You know what I mean?
mm,
People don't know, and to help people understand that that's okay and to ask, and each person has their own center of power and gravity,
mm.
and to not assume. So I don't know, that's too many words, so I don't know.
No. I like what you said. Invite, and the reason why I say that is because, so you know, I went to the casino to get my son some sneakers because you know it's there are outlets down there, and we just have a nice little family outing. And so I go in the store, in one of the stores, and the lady, you know, was very helpful, but it was like overly helpful. And my thing was, I was in there not just to purchase something, but it was actually a teaching moment for my kids how to navigate in the store. And she's just like, okay, sweetie, I'll help you with that. But she's also not talking to me. She's also talking to my kids. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I'm sorry, I really don't want your help. I need my sons to be able to hear my direction and do what it is that, which they were doing fine. But then when she became helpful, kids naturally are like, oh, well, she's doing it. But then you lose, you lose it. So I think for, you know, all parties involved in those type of situations, you got to let the invitation be extended. You know, a simple, do you need some help, sir? No, I'm okay, thank you. Well, let me know. My name is Mike or whatever, and I'll be at the register if you're looking for anything. And then that way, the receiving end, the person can say, okay, you know what? If I do need help, I'll just go to that individual. So the invitation, asking kindly is definitely important. How about yourself, Tahira? Like, what do you think is a practical way to take what we're talking about and actually apply it?
I love that with invite, and also the way you kind of ran with the word invite too. But I think as far as like one word to describe a practical way, I think compassion. And I think if we have compassion for people, and people don't always get it right when they express their frustration or when they protest, and that's to be expected. And some people, their reaction is to get angry and to be hostile. Maybe that some people want something, but maybe we need to be compassionate with them too. And that change really scares some people. And also, I think that people are sort of pitted against each other too, to some extent. And I think change scares people. So I would say compassion.
Compassion. I like that one. I like that one. Jason, how about yourself?
Jason's gonna have a good one. Okay.
Welcome. I going first, I was pretty good. Now I'm like, oh my God, you used all the good ones. No, I think understanding, and that kind of goes hand in hand with compassion. But I think understanding the other people's journeys and understanding that people have been put off, and definitely not being like overly helpful to the point where you're not genuine anymore.
Yeah.
That was a good point, because I've had that happen before too. People are like, "Oh, honey, can I get that?" No, they like follow you around and shit. And you're just like, I got this. I'm all right." You know. But understanding, one of my favorite quotes in the world. I don't know if somebody else has ever said it, but to understand and to be understood is the greatest thing in the world. Like, because that just sums it all up for me. If you can understand everybody around you and they can understand you, I mean, it's, you know, utopian, but understanding.
Yeah, but it's so important. Some of the most basic things in life we've we've kind of overanalyzed, and then we lose it in all these type of definitions and what have you. And really it boils down to just some bare ingredients: compassion, understanding, invitation, challenge one another. You know, I know for me, when I thought about it, I said love. You know, the Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. So like somebody's always going to do some type of infraction towards you, or you may do something to that person. But if you can, and then, you know, have the ability to forgive people of their trespasses, I think that's one of the greatest things, because then it leads to understanding. Because you can start putting off yourself and your pride, and you can look at the person and say, you know what, they didn't mean it like that. And even if the person had some type of malicious intent, you can let it go, because that person really needs the help, not you. You know what I mean? And you can walk away from it and say, you know what, that's an idea I don't need to be a part of my particular equation. You know what I mean? Especially if it's done to be harmful. Ayana, what do you think?
I think invite sounds pretty good, because the invitation, like Jason said, they're asking, and as well as you in the store, Corey, the lady was asking, do you need I can get that for you. I can get that for you. It feels good to ask me.
Yes.
Let me invite you into my space, not barge into my space. So it makes it feel better if I invite you in. Sometimes, you know, we get, as being paraplegics, you know, they just step in. They don't ask you anything. It's like, I can do that. And it's like, too late. I don't, let me ask you for it. So I like invite.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I found the hat, she found the shirt in the sweatshirt for me. Granted, I bought it all regardless, but I basically walked out with an outfit because of her. That's definitely important. I love the idea of flash mob, because I think diversity sometimes is spontaneous. You don't necessarily need to plan for it all intricately. So, you know, that's another word, being spontaneous. And so, you know, as we're trying to diversify and integrate, it just really comes down to our last question and getting to the root of it. Diversity doesn't necessarily mean equity. People, especially in minority population groups, are the first to feel the effects of inequality. These are systemic issues that can be overlooked by the intent for inclusion. And so what made me ask this question was, I read an article where a woman interviewed a town in North Carolina, and in that town, it was really diverse. And then she interviewed a number of Caucasian people. And it's not about a black or white thing. I think it's more about the nature of our way of thinking in any group of people. But, you know, with the group of Caucasian people that she interviewed, one of them said, well, you can be in a room filled with people of the same race, but they all come from different cultures and backgrounds. That makes it diverse. But on surface, there's no representation. Like if everybody in here was not in a wheelchair, or, you know, had some type of disability, let's say we're just all on our feet, but we all struggle with something from a mental health standpoint, it really doesn't matter. You won't know what's going on, so you can't really say that it's diversified. And then with the town that's full of diversification, they said that when they have like town meetings, the majority of the town council happens to be Caucasian, but they're like, everybody's, you know, invited to the meetings, but feeling like, all right, are we really as diverse as we say? Are we as diverse as we actually think? And so when I thought about all of that, I started wondering, like, man, has anybody ever felt excluded at the expense of somebody trying to make you feel included?
I had an incident, supposed to be one of my good friends, and it was supposed to be an all girls trip. And she said she was given an all girls trip, and I found out from another friend. So after I found out from another friend, because everybody was able-bodied, initially you have to get handicap accessible room if I go. So
Yeah.
I think she wanted to include me, but when she thought about everything that it entails to include me,
Wow.
I wasn't included. I mean, and it was shocking, because it was like, I'm supposed to be your we were good friends.
Right.
And when I could, told her the way I felt after finding out about the trip, she tried to include me in it, but not in it, in a way of just me and her going on a trip. But you did an all girls trip for your family. I mean, it's all friends, and it was about 20 of us. I'm gonna say about not 20, but probably about 10. And because of my disability, it caused me to not be included.
Wow.
And it kind of like, we're still friends, but yet we're not that tight like we used to be, because I don't want a friend that will do something like that to me. If you're going to be genuinely my friend, include me in everything. Don't hide some stuff from me and put me in some stuff when at your expense. It's not like I'm asking you to pay for the room, or, you didn't know how the trip was going to go, or you looking at your pictures and you're saying that you wanted pictures and everybody jumping up and, and you in the wheelchair, just different things. She had this thing set, all of them had shirts, and I was included, but not included.
Wow.
And it kind of like, it really, really, really made me look at our relationship, friendship, very differently.
That is a mouthful, honestly.
Yeah.
Because that happens all too often in the disability community. It's almost like, your friends naturally in the beginning, or over time, like, they rally, but then over time they kind of like filter away. And then I think sometimes preconceived notions can lead people to make you not included, because they figure out in their mind, like, oh, well, I don't know how this is going to be. I don't know how long this is going to take. What are the protocols, without actually asking directly. So that's definitely unfortunate. How about yourself, Lori? Like, any point in time, have you ever felt excluded at the expense of somebody trying to make you feel like a part of something?
Yeah, so I can't believe how old this story is, and that it was the first thing that came to mind. So I was invited to join this church, and I was told that everybody had to contribute to the church. So the first thing that came to my mind was mowing the lawn and, doing landscaping and things. And I was told, no, you're a woman. You can work in the kitchen with the other women.
Oh,
Just shocked by that. And I don't know.
wow.
So I knew it wasn't my church,
Wow, yeah. And that just, as we talked about earlier, like, women having the opportunity to shine on coins, right? I think when Susan B. Anthony was featured on it, or so, I want to say like some 100 years had passed by from once the women's suffrage movement had began. And you think about the class that women have been placed in since the dawn of time. Your place is in the kitchen at a church, nonetheless. And as a Christian, like that offends me because I'm like, everybody is useful in the kingdom of God. So nobody God has no impartiality when it comes down to that. Like everybody is useful. So, yeah, they're like, yeah, come on in, join us. We got you to cook.
Right.
No, you can't mow the lawn. And you're like, man, I bagged up 4 leaves last week. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I could definitely understand that. Jason, how about yourself?
I went to a diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar in Lake Placid.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And I'd been invited by this guy who is a great advocate for people with disabilities. He doesn't have a disability. He doesn't have a disability himself, but he's done a lot of good things. But I got there, and it's diversity, equity, inclusion, right? So there's got to be somebody from each one of the subgroups that are outed, right? And I'm looking around, and there's one woman that identifies as transgender. There's one guy that's Black. I'm the only guy that's in a wheelchair, and I'm like, they were talking about that exact thing. They're like, you ever feel like you're just part of that group because they had to meet some quota, or they had to,
Yes.
Diversity for the sake of saying, yeah, we got one of those. We got a Black guy, we got a Chinese guy, we got a guy in a wheelchair, we got a woman, we got, you know what I mean? Like, we checked all the boxes. They don't really give a crap about you or your difference. They just had to do it at a quota.
And that's the point about, yes, on surface that looks diverse, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's equitable. For all they knew, you could have been a billionaire, and somebody else who's able-bodied could be poor and whatnot. Yes, you look diverse, you look great on paper. If they snapped you in the local paper and whatnot, and they can slap the title on diversity, inclusion, it involves everybody. Look what we did. But you could feel like a fish out of water.
Oh man, some of the commercials that you see now are just ridiculous in that. They've got the guy in a wheelchair, the Black guy, the Asian woman, you know what I mean? Like they cover it all. They try to make sure they have one of everything. It's too artificial. Like, organically, those people would never be together like that. I'm sorry. Not exactly.
Yeah, no, that's the reactionary aspect of it. Like, you got to react, but do something that's actionable. But people oftentimes, especially in this day and age, we are reacting to the cry of it. And it's a stepping stone. It's a part of what needs to play out. I think it's a necessity, but you can see why it's being done. Because a lot of it is affecting people's bottom line. As soon as you say something to the effect of, hey, I'm not going to endorse you. Oh, well, you know what? Hey, we have the first Black man to ever, or the first transgender, or whatever the case may be, to make people feel like they're more part of the team, when in reality, it can make people feel more on the outliers. Tahira, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was like, I knew Jason would have a good one again. But I was kind of like Jason, where I felt like, ooh, I don't really know how to answer this one. I don't know if I've ever been in that situation. And if I have, I probably didn't notice that much. Because first of all, for an event, you got me at free food. Like, I just like to go somewhere and have free food. So if I was just there, I don't know, I wouldn't care that much. But yeah, the ones you mentioned are certainly, interesting. But I think before I was in a wheelchair, I didn't know anyone disabled. So I don't judge people too harshly, because I was pretty ignorant. Now my friend in law school, we were in law school together in the 90s, and she was friends with the only person that was in a wheelchair and the only transgender student in the law school. So she has always like brought people in, but I wasn't so I kind of knew those people a little bit through her, but I didn't really seek people out or make it clear to people that they were like everybody else, that I wasn't really like that. So I'm not surprised that a lot of people don't really and as I had mentioned, I think at our last meeting too, I think it'll be a game changer now that more disabled students are in the same classrooms as
Yeah.
non-disabled. I think if you don't grow up around even knowing anybody in a wheelchair, then they just seem weird when you get older. If you're never around them. So I'm not, yeah. If it's happened, I didn't take much notice.
I understand that. John, how about yourself?
Well, I've been hearing other people's answers, and I've been thinking how what solves this problem is that if you're trying to create a diversity conference, an inclusion conference, or whatnot, it's really important to diversify the people who have agency in the event, right? Or who have agency in the community. You can't just have membership. The people in charge have to be the diverse representation has to have the same amount of agency. And that's something that takes time, as you were saying, Corey, that sometimes these things are just stepping stones. From my personal experience, I haven't had much experience like this. The only instance I can kind of point to is when I was transferring colleges. I transferred, and as a transfer student, it was a very small group of people who were able to transfer. So it was a great privilege, but one, I felt like perhaps they chose me as a transfer student because I was a minority. Now I was in a wheelchair. And then second, they put all the transfer students in, this is at Dartmouth College. So, right, really good school. I did not have the grades to get in. But all the transfer students were in one dorm, on like the third floor, with no elevator. And I ended up, living by myself in a whole other building, and it was really isolating. And I just remember how that felt like to be a part of this special group that had a rare opportunity, and yet to feel completely, like, not completely, it was lonely. Like, it was really lonely. And so I don't know if that was what they were trying to do. But yeah, it doesn't feel good to have the diversity branch extended on one hand, and then the things that you need, and the community, the sense of ownership, sense of freedom to do what you would normally do, or to have your voice heard. That really sucks when that doesn't happen in any situation.
Mm.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I definitely, when I was at that conference, I definitely felt like I represented the disability community, and that was important. And it was important for me to be there. But it was that one of those after the fact things. And then when you hit that question, I was like, I think that kind of was placating me a little bit. But at the same time, I was proud to represent, and I didn't feel different when I was there at all, because it was a conference on diversity, right? Everybody's accepting everybody no matter what. And to go back to the other point, as far as not knowing what it's like to be in a chair when you work, I cut people slack all the time. I'm like, I didn't know. People don't realize a little lip on something or a step is going to keep somebody out until you're with that person. So until you are that person, you just don't see it, and you can't blame anybody for that.
Definitely, and that's something that as we conclude, that's the main takeaway that I want anybody who views this, whether you're able-bodied or not. It's never a bash on able-bodied folks, because all of us were there once upon a time. But it's more about trying to highlight our challenges that we face and inviting you in to understand how to overcome those challenges based off of our representation. And you know, that's what we honestly are always trying to seek to do in society and in life, because people won't know unless you say something. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm not a mind reader, you know, so how do I know what is affecting you unless you tell me? I know for me, this makes me, it's not because like people are necessarily doing it intentionally, but they have a tendency to do it. And it's kind of like, to Ayana's point, like, you know, my friends could go out and I'm like, yo, you don't call me to go out. Like, we gonna go out. It's always like either I initiate it and I say, hey, you know, let's go do this or figure it out. But I'm just like, you know, some of my friends are good about that, but I'm just like, a simple going out to dinner is not a big deal. We were doing that in the beginning when I first got hurt. Everybody's rallying around, so it shouldn't change just because, you know, I'm just able. But you know, I also understand life circumstances, and sometimes, you know, my friends need a heads up as well. But when I thought about this question, what comes to my mind is like, you know, family members that will say to me, oh, I was gonna call you, but I know you like to get to bed early. I'm like, I don't go to sleep till about 2 a.m. Most times, I'm just a night owl by nature. So don't assume, you know what I mean? And it kind of makes me feel a little excluded, because I'm like, when I was walking, nobody ever questioned or challenged what time to call me because they thought I wanted to be in late. I'm just like, I don't go to bed early. It's 10 o'clock right now. I'm not in bed early and whatnot. I probably won't be back to bed till like another hour and a half, if that. So, but people need to have that invitation, and they need to know that these are the things that are acceptable. And when we understand things that are acceptable to one another and what's not acceptable, I think that's where we'll start learning how to diversify in what we can, do. But you know, you guys have been tremendous tonight. I took some notes while we were talking, just to summarize everything and what my takeaway from it. You know, every group, not idea, should be involved. Voice for the marginalized. We need to take action and eliminate barriers. Respect different ideas with kindness, love. Treatment of others better than ourselves. We can't force ideas, but ideas should be heard. You know, when we try to look at diversity, it's beautiful. It can be utopian. It is built off of pressure. I mean, it is many different forms and shapes that develop this foundation. This diversity basically has a lot of strength in it, but it has differences as well. Be like water, ever changing. Don't be static, and understand that when you're ever changing, you're building up resilience. It's harmonious. We got to be able to take risks and be vulnerable, find connections, be active in your listening, and you're active in your engagement. And when you want to do change, you got to have a flash mob in mind. And as long as you got that going on, I think diversity is in everyone's future, whether it's done with a group or just how you treat other people. I think that is very possible. And thank you, everyone. Please, you know, tune in next month as we have another More Than Walking video podcast discussion. Until then, please do not lose hope. Be encouraged and stay aware. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Night,
you. Nice
guys.
meeting y'all.
Stay safe.
Yeah, you too.
Nice
Thank
Good
you.
night.
seeing you.